Semitic Magic, Its Origins and Development by R. Campbell Thompson. In Leviticus, I don't know how to say 4 in German, wird das Blut beim gewöhnlichen Sündopfer an die Hörner des Brandopferaltars gestrichen, dagegen beim Sündopfer des Hohenpriesters und des Volkes in das Inneres der Hut gebracht und den Vorhang gesprengt und an die Hörner des Rauchaltars gestrichen. Dieser Unterschied were Exodus 29 and Leviticus 9 nicht gemacht, vielmehr wird 29, 12, 9 and 9:15 auch beim Sündopfer des Hohenpriesters und des Volkes das Blut nur an den Opferaltar gestrichen. Es ist des aber hier offenbar durch solchen Rites, denn hat keinen Sinn anzunehmen bei der Einwölbung der Hut sie ausnahmsweise dreimal eine weniger feierliche Form beliebt worden und außerdem wird 29, 14, 9, 11, 15 das Flutschkreuz, das draußen vor dem Lager verbrannt, weil es nach Leviticus 4 nur bei den heiligsten Sündopfern gestaltet, deren Blut und das Innere zur Hut gekommen ist, also ein unberührbar und unauflösbar Differenz. Leviticus 4 geht einen Schritt über Exodus 29, Leviticus 9 hinaus. Die Steuerung erstreckt auch darin, dass jeder Sündopfer des Volkes eine Fahre gefordert wird, während Leviticus 9 nur ein Ziegenbock. Schließlich scheint es nach der Unterschrift 738, als ob die Überschrift 1:1 erst später suggested worden sei, Leviticus 1-7 in die stiftlichen Gesetzgebung einzufügen. Jedoch wird die letzte sachlich vorausgesetzt. Of course, an entity aided in the atonement where a pig is killed before Shamash. So that's, they're not killing Shamash in the Hebrew thing. We therefore may presume that the later magicians perhaps learnt the substitute, which was supposed to have absorbed the demoniac influence, was not always so deadly as their ancestors accounted it. An Oriental wizard, not too well blessed with the world's goods, is not likely to have been loath to let a good lamb be thrown away, and his surreptitious feast may perhaps have been given rise to the alternative method of the disposal of the carcass. So-called heathen priests are always under the suspicion of battening on the entity's food, unknown to the worshippers, as we learn from the apocryphal story of Bel and the dragon, and there was probably not much to choose in the matter of acceptance of prerequisites between the priest of one nation or another. Out of this, as a corollary, a second explanation arises, which also includes the use of the holy altar, that is, these piacular offerings, as we now have them, had begun and to be so confounded with the sacrifices of burnt offerings, and the real significance of their origin so lost, that so much of the atonement ritual had been brought into the similitude with the traditions of the tribal sacrificial feasts, although several of the salient features remained. Now, even more so with the Christians, but I bet so with the in the early days of Judaism, or the pre-Judaism that, eventually became Judaism, that people were suspicious. But there's not really evidence. 540 BCE, if you say this is when Judaism started, rather than the second book of Maccabees historical appearance of Judaism, I think people were suspicious, including some strains that made their way into the Bible. We have next to settle what is meant by the ordinance, which directs the ashes of the piacular offering are to be taken out to a clean place where ashes are poured out. The Levitical phrase is exactly paralleled in the Assyrian Shirpu series. Let the taboo, its bond, go forth to the desert, to the clean place. There is, however, no reason to suppose that Haupet and following Meisner that this is a euphemism for an unclean place. Unclean places are cemeteries, ruins, latrines, and the like. Such are inhabited by the demons who would resent the approach of any mortal, thus ill-treating one of their number, and would doubtless help the devil imprisoned in the atonement. And Meisner says, Jenes hatte man en reinen Ortet, und in Zustand zur Reinheit dieses am heiligen Ort und natürlich auch in Zustand zur Reinheit zu genießen. Something of the world, right? The rabbis considered that it was proper for a man, on going to an unclean place, to beg 2 angels, which obviously accompanied him, to wait until he should return. Well, they assumed that that was the case. Obviously, the reason is that these angels were not strong enough to cope with the local devils if they trespassed on their domain. This maintains in the spirit world that the Semitic principle, which compels the traveler to obtain a foreign sheikh's permission previous to crossing his territory. Well, that's not quite the same thing, but people consult the jinn of the area before going into places in a lot of areas. Whatever you call the jinn, whatever your language term is for it, the unseen male and female beings, that's what the jinn is. In the rite of Deuteronomy 21:1, the reason for the barren valley being chosen, according to Dilliman, Elwad, and Kyle, in order that the purifying blood may not be uncovered and lose its virtue, according to Robertson Smith, that it may avoid all risk of contact with sacrosanct flesh. But it may be in accord with the idea of the scapegoat which ascended to the desert. Jeremiah quotes Josephus as saying that the second scapegoat before the burning had to be brought to a very clean place, Eis katharutaton chorion. Antiquities 3:10-3. Again, we are to see in this deposition of tabooed articles outside the camp an explanation why, at the capture of Jericho, Joshua 6:23, they put Rahab and her family outside the camp, the remainder of the inhabitants being devoted. An Assyrian text talks about the Kirpi, indicated as the locality for disposing of the substitute after the ceremony, Suk Erbeti Crossroads, apparently the place where the atonement is to be put, but the text is mutilated. With regard to Kirby, ash heaps, it is so purely conjectural that it affords no room for discussion as to why that would be the only case. The word occurs elsewhere in Macmillan's article in Biter Your Assyria was abbreviated, volume 5, 534, Anna Mutu, Kirpi, Ushabri, and there's words after Mutu, but the crossroads, on the other hand, are difficult of explanation, for they are the resort of spirits. Hecate is often to be found there, and in the Testament of Solomon, the demon Envy says, "In the crossways, I have many services to render." It's important to look at the meaning of the names that we hear for demons and angels and stuff like this, and spiritual places. In Talmudic medicine, to heal an issue of blood, the patient was to sit at a parting of the ways with a cup of wine in her hand, and someone coming up behind her was to cry out suddenly, "Be healed of thine issue of blood." To which, of course, she spilt it all over herself, right? Maimonides quotes the Talmud, Chulin 77a, as saying that the uterus of animals which have been selected for the sanctuary must be buried and not suspended from a tree or buried at the crossroads, because this is one of the ways of the Amorite. The suspension of placenta on trees occurs in anthropology. In the Babar archipelago between New Guinea and Celebes, the placenta are mixed with ashes and put into a small basket, which 7 women, each of them armed with a sword, hang up on a tree of a particular kind, Citrus hystrix. Well, that's one of the varieties of lemon. Is it the more round one? Is it the key limes, or is it the ones you're more likely to get at the supermarket? I don't remember. The women carry swords for the purpose of frightening the evil spirits. Otherwise, these mischievous beings might get a hold of the placenta and thereby make the child sick. The Talmudic charm for the issue of blood is merely an instance of sympathetic magic. The cup of wine represents the blood, and the sudden start caused by the unexpected cry will cause the person to spill it. See? This, of course, is typical of what will happen to the issue. Presumably, the crossroads will have some particular influence on this atonement. The wine is a little more. In the same way that as in the Assyrian text, the Phoenician inscriptions do not throw any light, as far as I know, on the atonement system in the text. The parts of the sacrifice to be taken by the officer are mentioned, but the meanings of the words for sacrifices are not entirely clear. CIS 1, 237, 252. Remember, some of these libraries stashes that they found of tablets number in the thousands. So, although I do think full translations should become available if they're not in any particular instances, and the actual characters of the text to verify and to use them, because we're talking spiritual records, a lot of this stuff. After this rather lengthy digression on the unwitting sins, we may return to other special cases of atonements. For the moment, we shall omit the atonements for oaths and ordinary sin. The unwitting sin of the ruler comes under 2 heads: that of the royal taboo, explained on page 138, and the unwitting sin of the individual, which has already been discussed. The tribal atonement for unwitting sin is of a similar nature. The priestly atonement is clearly to be accounted as a method for cleansing the priest-elect from any unknown breach of taboo which must be removed before he can be consecrated, and this must be the explanation of Numbers 29:1. Our next step is to substitute our theory from the Assyrian incantations. We have seen that the atonement of the Hebrews, in which a bird flies away with uncleanliness, is ordinary magic, and the transference of ills to waxen figures or animals is as common among the Semites as with others. In Assyrian folklore, this is one of the commonest ways of exorcising a demon to go forth from the sick man, and what is more, as we have already mentioned, the word in frequent use is kupuru, radically the same word for atone in Hebrew. The process is simple. The priest slaughters an animal, pig, or kid as a substitute for the sick man, so that he may thus, as Taylor says, coax the demon, threaten it, make offerings to it, and drive it out of the patient's body, or to induce it to take up its abode in some other. One of the Syrian atonements, published by Zimmerman, Tefillin 137, gives a ceremony for purifying the kid. Thou shalt make pure atonements for the king. Bring a censer and a torch to him, washing him in a water bowl. Fill 2 berze galissar vessels with water from the bowl, putting cedar and cypress in the water. Put 2 atonement vessels there. The king shall hold 1 atonement vessel on his right and on his left hand. So, berze galsar, I'm not sure if that's a material or a style or what. The rest is mutilated. Unfortunately, the preceding part of the tablet is lost, and we cannot tell why purification is needed, but it certainly points to the principle of royal taboo. The connection between the Hebrew and Assyrian ceremonies will be obvious to anyone who reads the following quotations from the cuneiform tablets. They are all exorcisms for persons suffering from some sickness. For instance, in the case of the Asaku disease, Marduk is given the following advice by his father Ea, and the priest follows it in healing the sick man. Take a white kid of Tammuz, lay it down facing the sick man, take out its heart, and place it in the hand of that man. Perform the incantation of Eridu. The kid whose heart thou hast taken out is unclean food, with which thou makest atonement for the man. Well, nothing wrong with eating a goat, well, in general. And compare this with Xenocrates' dictum that the blood of the kid was useful against epilepsy. Ibn al-Baythar relates this. And there's a manuscript number 2593. Lu, for which we see my article in PSBA of February 1908, as the word is important, the reasons for adopting meaning unclean or filthy are repeated here. It may also have the meaning of excrement, which is paralleled by the Syriac Manmahal, I don't know, stercus. And there's okay, dross of iron. I'm not sure how to pronounce any of those 3 words really. Because it looks like you got an ayin and a meme and hull, and this one ma'atraf, but that's not it either. Okay, dross of iron. La'u has the particular meaning of filthy in regards to the streets. Ulila shuishsunu mu'ate. I have cleansed their filthy streets. And there is the group Charduna, which is Lu e Igirite, number 8596. A classical text, Sennacherib 6:16, gives the deluge in my fighting Kema le Zumershun Estup swept away their bodies like dung. It is possibly some other plastic material with little magical figures made from it. Enim ma, Musa prata nadi, salam li khan. And this is the prayer of uttering a chant over a figure li, dung, parallel hymns of this being recited over the figures of bitumen, bronze in the same tablet. See also 441. Salmane lu sa uru lu sha tetu lu sha li. Either of bitumen or clay. Or li.